Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball. Join us Friday, April 24th through Sunday, April 26th for our first homestand of the season and our 5th anniversary celebration. Score big with $5 tickets. Grab $5 domestic draft beers. Enjoy $5 popcorn. And yes, 2 Nathan's hot dogs for just $5. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats. This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
And I'm Jake Novak filling in for Roger Stone again on this. Is it Monday night? It's Monday night, April 20th. I know it's April 20th, but I didn't know. It's been a long weekend, folks. I want to tell you, there's a bunch of breaking news stories. I know you heard just some of them on many of the stations, but I want to get to them, and I'm going to give them to you in descending order. In other words, I'm going to give you what I think is really the top breaking news story right now, the biggest story, and then go down the list. And that means that the order that I'm giving to you is very deliberate on my part, and I'll explain why maybe the story you think is tops is not really tops. But honestly, the top story, and it should be the top story almost every day in America until this war with Iran is really over, not just a ceasefire, is that we have the United States, just yesterday, and now we're still sifting through it, attacked and boarded an Iranian ship that was trying to break the U.S. blockade. And sure enough, on that ship, they found all kinds of chemicals that can be used to propel ballistic missiles. And the ship came, and those materials came from China. I don't know how many people in America who actually somewhat follow the news, somewhat politically aware, what percentage of them still think that China is not at war with the United States, but they are at war with the United States, and they have been for some time. I would say more than 10 years. I would say that mostly, for most of those 10 years, it's been economic war, but economic warfare is still warfare. And now they continue to try to help Iran in their conflict with the United States. A big reason why that F-15 was shot down a couple weeks ago was because of new Chinese radar that was given to them. And this is just another blatant example of what the United States is dealing with in a belligerent country like China. But here's the thing. If you think China really cares about Iran, believes in Islamism, I mean, that's ridiculous. China is very much like the USSR in its worst years during the Cold War, when it just got involved in foreign countries to create chaos and mayhem. Soviet Union never cared about the people of Cuba, never cared about the Eastern Bloc countries' citizens, people. Citizens is a stretch. You really aren't a citizen in a communist dictatorship. You're just kind of a piece of, a piece of flesh, basically. China is helping Iran because Iran's a good chaos maker. And they've been a big supporter of them. And yes, they get oil from Iran. And they like that. But they can still get oil from Iran if there's a new regime there. It's just going to be a little bit harder, I guess, because there'll be some sanctions involved that they'll have to deal with. But the point is, China's not really interested in Iran for any humanitarian or ideological reason. They just want to cause havoc. They think the United States should be harassed. I don't know if we're ever going to get to the bottom of the greatest act of war China may have committed against the United States, which was the COVID virus, deliberately spreading it not only to the United States, but pretty much all over the world. And to me, the evidence of that is based on objective facts. They stopped people from within that Wuhan province from traveling to the rest of China because they wanted to keep it in the Wuhan province, but they allowed them to travel all over the world. I mean, what does that tell us? There's more to it, of course, but to me, this is still the top story, the fact that the blockade's still in effect. Now, my Iran story is based on more than just that. The reason why I think it's a top story is based on more than just that. We're also waiting on the edge of our seats to see if we're going to have these peace talks, round 2, in Pakistan. gun to my head, I'd say that these talks will happen, even though the Iranians are not so sure they're going to show up, even though President Trump says he may just end the ceasefire on Wednesday no matter what happens. But I think that something will happen because, again, we heard a lot of the same kinds of denials from Iran before the first round of talks, and then they did show up. So we'll see. But that's an important issue. And I think another reason why it really is breaking news and still our top story is because, let's get back to the economic aspect of it. I now believe quite thoroughly that this Iran war and everything surrounding it has finally flummoxed Wall Street. Wall Street, in my opinion, absolutely surrendered and admitted today that they don't know what the heck's happening, which is okay. A lot of us don't know what the heck is happening, at least what's going to happen next. I don't know if anyone could bet on that. And the reason why I say that is that you had about as flat a close on Wall Street as you're ever going to see. The Dow closed down 4.87 points. That's it. That's almost just a flat zero. And the S&P 500, they were down a little bit more, 0.25%, also 0.25% down for the NASDAQ. That's as flat a close as you're ever going to see. And when Wall Street closes flat, that means it's keeping its powder dry. It really doesn't know which way the wind's going to blow. And not enough people are willing to make a bet one way or the other. In other words, it's basically saying, I don't know, I'm waiting for more data. Wall Street rarely does that. These are smart guys and gals. They usually have a pretty good angle on something. They're sometimes wrong on that angle, but they usually have a pretty good angle on it, and they feel confident enough to put actual money on what they think is going to happen next. Not today. And I don't think you can blame them. It's been going back and forth. The Strait of Hormuz was open on Friday. Then it was closed again. Are we going to have talks? Is Trump going to end the ceasefire? What's this thing going on with China and the blockade? I mean, it's a lot of questions. And Wall Street, I think, threw in the towel today. Doesn't mean they're going to have that towel thrown in for long. They might make a bet in one real strong, clear way tomorrow. But for now, they don't know. And when you get these masters of the universe types on Wall Street throwing up their hands and saying, I don't know what's next, you should take notice of that because they don't always do that. And I think that that's a very big deal. So that's why that's the top story. Now, I think the second top story is that Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple for all these years, 15 years, is going to step down. He'll step down in September, but he announced it today. There was really no specific hint that this was going to happen today. In November, we started to see articles in the Wall Street Journal about the leaders to potentially replace Tim Cook, not based on anything he had said about when he was going to step down, but just because he had his 65th birthday, and that's typically a time when CEOs step down. Sure enough, the Wall Street Journal was kind of right on that because the first person that they named as the most likely person to take over for Tim Cook, sure enough, that's the person that they chose. A guy named John Turnus. He's 50 years old. He might be 51 now because it's been a few months since that article was first written. He has been named as a successor. And again, this is all going to happen in September. Now, why do I think this is the second biggest story of the night? Well, it's because Apple, for so long, was absolutely the most valuable company in the world. It's still pretty darn close. And I also think it's really important because in addition to being such a trendsetter, and so many of us have some Apple technology in our pockets right now or in our home, but it's an amazing story because Tim Cook didn't have an easy job, right? He took over from Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs. Not an easy pair of shoes to fill at all. And I don't know of anyone, whether you hate Apple, whether you hated or love Steve Jobs, I don't know if anyone can possibly deny the fact that he absolutely exceeded any expectations. He's a guy who's famous for working around the clock. He answers emails apparently at all hours of the day and night. And he kept that company way, way atop the mountaintop for a long time. And it's not because Apple has declined that it's no longer the most valuable company anymore. It's just because AI has become such a thing, and NVIDIA has come out of nowhere to become the biggest company by market share, the value in the stock market. But still, very big deal that he's stepping down. This is someone, in my opinion, almost very close, almost as important as Steve Jobs departing the company, or Steve Jobs passing away. Because Tim Cook had a tremendous amount of pressure on him to keep that momentum that Jobs had created for so long, and he did it and then some, as far as money was concerned. And Apple is still very, very dominant technology-wise. I know it doesn't seem as cool and as hip as it did maybe 10 years ago, but, there's still not a lot of people who have smartphones in America that aren't with an iPhone. I mean, I know the Galaxy is popular and stuff like that, but honestly, the iPhone is still dominant, and that's a long time for a big tech item. Think how long did the dominant PC companies in the world, for example, how long did they stay atop the mountaintop? Not long. Same thing with laptop. I mean, that the shelf life on the iPhone as being the dominant smartphone in this country and many others is really long by big tech standards. So you have to be impressed by that. So I think that's a huge story. Now, only in third place, only getting the bronze medal for me is this story about the Labor Secretary, Lori Chavez de Remmer, stepping down. Now, why she's resigning? Now, why am I only putting that as a number 3 thing when everyone else says that's the big story of the night? Well, first of all, let's not ignore the elephant in the room. Does anyone really care who the Labor Secretary is? I mean, honestly. Please be honest. Of course you don't. Are the things that she's accused of doing serious? Yeah, I think it sounds like she was an incredible dumbass. Doing all kinds of stuff in her office, fooling around, allegedly, with a security guard, the husband coming in and doing all kinds of nasty stuff. I mean, honestly, I'm not shedding a tear for this woman, and I don't think anybody else is, which is, again, why it deserves only third place on my list of big stories tonight. It's just not a big story. But you do have to report it. I'm not saying we don't report it. I'm just saying, whatever. There'll be somebody else who'll take over, and no one will notice, and no one will care. And if they say they care, and they're not someone who works at the Department of Labor, or they're not really connected to it very closely in a professional way, then, don't believe them. Let's put it that way. It's as simple as that. A lot of breaking news tonight, though, and however, all those breaking stories I actually think are less important than a story that's going to break tomorrow, and that's out of the state of Virginia. So why is the state of Virginia more important than all those other stories I just said, at least as far as as the sense of urgency thing? I still think that war in Iran is our number one story, enduring for many, probably weeks to come. But the new breaking story that everyone needs to pay attention to is coming out of the state of Virginia. And when we come back on the Stone Zone, I'm going to tell you why. Stay with us.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
And I'm Jake Novak, filling in for Roger Stone again this evening on this Monday, April 20th. There's a huge, huge vote in the state of Virginia tomorrow. It's officially called a referendum. That's when voters vote on an issue. And it's just a one-issue referendum. It's a yes or no vote. The Democrats want everyone to vote yes for a redistricting, opening up for redistricting the state that will change Virginia from a 6-5 in favor of the Democrats' House delegation to likely a 10-1 stack for the Democrats' advantage in the House if this goes through. Now, I do want to say one thing. No matter what happens in the referendum, the courts could nullify a yes vote because of some shenanigans that were used to get this referendum in front of the voters in the first place. But that aside, you're going to hear a lot of people, former President Obama, for example, been really pounding the table for people to vote yes on this. He really wants to see this railroaded through. You've heard a lot of people correctly talking about how the new governor, Abigail Spanberger, specifically promised not to push redistricting when she was running for governor last year. And, of course, this is one of the first things she's done. She was just sworn in January, and she clearly not only broke that promise, but always meant to because she did it so quickly. And you're also going to hear something else, and this is something I want to dig into here. You'll hear something about how, if the Republicans, if conservatives, if common sense people can just show up to vote, they can avoid this, and it's all your fault if you don't show up to vote, and on down the line. Well, there's a lot of truth to that, yes. If you're listening in the state of Virginia, or if you have a family member in Virginia or a friend, You might want to call them and tell them to vote no on this thing. Absolutely. I'm down with that, and I get it. But I'm also down with not ignoring the fact that this is a stacked deck. These kinds of elections are stacked. This is another form of voter suppression. These elections in the middle of nowhere, coming out of nowhere, not with not a tremendous amount of time for people to really consider the issue. Regular work day in the middle of the week. These kinds of things, as even Nate Silver admitted years ago, these kinds of elections on Tuesdays, off year, everything is a form of voter suppression of regular working people in America, and it is a huge advantage to Democratic operatives, unions who not only give their members a day off to go vote, but pay them, sometimes with our tax money, to go get out the vote. It's a form of voter suppression of Republicans. You hear the Democrats talking all the time, voter suppression, voter suppression. Putting an election that's this important in the middle of the week without months and months of prep time like you get for a presidential election or a governor's race is a form of voter suppression. So, yes, we want people to participate, but before you demonize someone who may not be able to or hasn't paid attention, understand that was the whole point. They created something that does come under the radar for a lot of people. You know, we just had all these elections and people think, again, Virginia just had 2 straight years of big elections, a presidential race in 2024, their governor's race and their race for lieutenant governor and attorney general last. Now there's another. I mean, it's enough. A lot of people get sick of it. And that's the point. That's why they do this. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of this kind of important stuff. You know there's not going to be as big a turnout in Virginia as there was for the governor's race or for the presidential election, but this arguably is a lot more important than either one of those. Now, everyone is expecting the vote to be close, but, you know, we've heard that before. A lot of people thought the governor's race was going to be close last year. Spanberger won pretty clearly. Same thing with the lieutenant governor's race. Same thing with the attorney general's race, even though the guy who won was the one who basically talked about killing people and being in favor of shooting folks. He won anyway. So it's possible they've got this thing all stacked, the stacked deck in Virginia anyway, somehow. But it's a very big story. I mean, the Republican majority in the House is in such danger as it is to redistrict a state of Virginia, which is a very, very purple state. I know it's gone in presidential elections lately for the Democrats, but it usually goes back and forth for the governor's mansion, right? It was a Republican last time. Now they have this Democrat. You can't be a governor in Virginia 2 consecutive terms. So there's very often, it's very rare that the same party holds on to the governor's mansion, by the way. So it's a purple state. This is not a state where there should be this kind of an issue where they're going to make it 10-1 in favor of the Democrats. But it's possible because of this kind of voter suppression. It's really wrong. Call your friends in Virginia. Tell them to vote no. When I come back, I'm going to hit Alan Dershowitz with a little bit of common sense that I think he's been ignoring. We'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Yeah, Drebin. I have a message for you from Vincent Ludwig. I'm sorry I can't hear you. Don't fire the gun while you're talking.
That's the great Leslie Nielsen from The Naked Gun. I have a message for you. Don't fire the gun while you're talking. That was a live look-in at the peace talks between Iran and the United States. I don't know who's firing the gun and who's saying, I can't hear you, don't fire the gun when you're not talking, because both seem to be making it clear that it's just not possible to make peace with a radical regime like that. I just don't know what kind of agreement we can possibly expect to get from Iran, but we'll see what happens. Again, gun to my head, I would say there probably will be some talks this week in Pakistan, even though it seems pretty shaky right now. But it's definitely not definite. I don't really know if we're going to get these talks off the ground, but I guess it'll happen. Again, that's my guess. Alan Dershowitz, making news just in the last couple of hours with an editorial in the Wall Street Journal. It'll be in the print edition tomorrow, but it's already up on the online edition, saying that he is now officially registered as a Republican. He is now officially leaving the Democratic Party. You know that for so many years now, Alan Dershowitz has been coming out in favor of a number of policies coming out of the Republican Party, most specifically a lot of Trump's policies regarding Israel, regarding the efforts of the Trump administration in both his first term and now this term to protect Jewish students on campus. And Dershowitz always likes to say, I'm still a Democrat, I'm still a liberal, but I have to acknowledge X, Y, and Z. Well, now he won't be able to say that anymore. He is no longer a Democrat. And you know, I guess a lot of people will cheer this. There's a lot of people who don't like Alan Dershowitz. For whatever reason, most of them on the left, Alan Dershowitz's enemies, even though he still claims he's a liberal ideologically, most of his enemies are on the left and have been for quite some time now because any connection to President Trump, any support for him is responded to by the far left with incredible vitriol. There's never any forgiveness for that. Some of that's happening to John Fetterman now, and he's not even going anywhere near as close as Alan Dershowitz has to praising President Trump, but he's getting it too. But as I read the editorial, and we get to maybe even the second paragraph or the third paragraph, there's still something that's really bothering me about it, and it's the fact that you have this incredibly intelligent man in Alan Dershowitz, and I've met him in person, and he's a guest all the time on a lot of these talk shows and on a lot of the stations that you hear, you're hearing this program on now. And anyone who thinks that he's lost his fastball, it's just not true. He's an incredibly sharp person. If you think that he's losing it or slow, it's probably because you have a political difference with him. And it shows. Now, I have political differences with him on a lot of things, but I don't think he's lost his edge. But I do think that he has always, this isn't a deterioration, I think this has always been a blind spot for him and a lot of other people. Because he talks about, like, well, I still oppose the Republican Party on immigration, abortion, a few other issues. But because the Democratic Party is so virulently anti-Israel right now and that is such a red flag when it comes to a litmus test for morality, I can't stay with the Democratic Party. Here's the thing, and the thing that a lot of people don't understand, probably one of the most misunderstood concepts in the world or things that we see in the world is anti-Semitism. I meet so many people who are on the right side of a lot of issues, and a lot of them are certainly on the right side of being opposed to anti-Semitism, and a lot of them are even victims of anti-Semitism, and they don't understand it. So pay attention now, because you're about to hear probably the only person anywhere in the media or anywhere who's going to tell you really what anti-Semitism is all about. No, it's not about jealousy. No, it's not about religious theological differences. No, it's not because the Jews are another example of the other. That's one of the liberal buzzwords for racism. It's hatred of the other because, they look different. It's none of those things. It's none of those things. Anti-Semitism is born out of a hatred of civilization, rules, decency, right and wrong. There are two reasons for it. The first reason being, if you really want a world where it's okay to murder, it's okay to rape, it's okay to vandalize, it's okay to steal, sadly, it's a pretty good idea to start doing that to the Jews, because you will get the least pushback if you do. If you come out, no matter how absolutely crazy it sounds, and start accusing Jews of everything or start promoting attacks on Jews, you're going to get a huge percentage of the public in any country you live in, sadly, that's going to be okay with it. And if you want a world where if you resent rules, if you resent civilization for whatever reason, there's no usual logical reason to be so resentful. But if you're one of those kinds of people who just wants mayhem, violence, no rules, nothing constricting you from anything, anti-Semitism is a good way to start. Why not? Let's go. You start with the Jews, and suddenly it's like the movie The Purge. Suddenly we're willing to accept some level of murder, rape, mayhem, vandalism, and the whole 9 yards. And then it becomes harder to say no when they move on to the next group. Now, that's one reason why you start with the Jews. The other reason why is because no matter how good a job the Jews are doing at upholding their own principles and laws, because I don't think that Jews are genetically better people in any way whatsoever, because there's no such thing really as that. But there's no denying that when it comes to civilization and rules and the whole idea of meritocracy and an eternal morality, Jews brought that concept to the world. Again, for better or for worse. Are Jews doing a better job of upholding the morality and meritocracy ideas that they brought to civilization? I don't know. But there's no denying that they did. And if you don't like meritocracy, which, by the way, a lot of people don't like it throughout history, it's never been accepted. Every civilization at one point or the other has decided to use something other than meritocracy to create a hierarchy, whether it's skin color, birth order, gender, whatever it is. The idea that you're really just going to do your best with obviously some failings to let the people who work the hardest and have the best ability be the ones who totally succeed the most is really very, very distasteful to folks who want to dominate and use their own criteria as they see fit to decide who's in power and who isn't. Here come the Jews thousands of years ago saying, no, there's a right or wrong, and you should be rewarded and punished based on your deeds on earth, not by your skin color, not by your birth order, not by your gender. That's it. Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you. Do you understand how radical and hated that concept is? It might sound very logical to you. Maybe you think that's what you were taught your whole life, and I hope it was. But do you understand how most of the world has never come to accept that and very much hates that idea? No, the dictator wants to have his family be the ones who get the inside track. Or somebody else wants their religious group to have the inside track, no matter whether they uphold the rules or not. Wait, there's rules? Darn, I was hoping to set the rules and change them as I see fit. Wait, those rules are eternal? The certain rights and responsibilities that all humans have, no matter who's in charge, no matter who has money. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. And Alan Dershowitz is out here saying, well, this anti-Semitism is why I have to leave the Democratic Party. Here's something that I've learned, and I learned it a long time ago. As soon as you have a civilization, a government, an entity like a university, a corporation, or any entity at all that says we are no longer just going to judge people on their test scores or on their abilities, we've got to do something to change the criteria. So, for example, a university like Harvard, for many, many years, deciding to admit students not based on just their scores in school, how well they do on their essay and their ability and their interest in learning. It's going to be, hey, what's their skin color? What's their nationality? In other words, they're throwing meritocracy out the window. And I don't have a problem with some changing of the criteria based on someone's effort. Like, for example, if someone comes from a really, really lousy school and they showed up every day and did really well in their classes, then I can understand, hey, we're going to weight their grade point average a little bit more than their SAT or their ACT. That's a little bit different. Then we're getting into the weeds. But here's what I can tell you very, very honestly. If you ever see an organization, whether it's a university all the way up to a government, that officially makes a meritocracy policy, basically says, no, like Zohar Mamdani, we're going to tax the white people more. We're going to give more money to people of a certain skin color. Not necessarily based on their income or their effort. We're just going to look at their skin color. Whenever you have an entity like that, I can promise you this because I have a 100% track record on this, and I've been following it for a long time and well before, and I've been following the history. Whenever you have an organization that throws meritocracy out the window, they will come for the Jews soon enough. Because, again, whether we uphold it better or worse than anyone else, and I don't really know that we do, and I don't think we do in a lot of cases. So don't call on the station or email or say, oh, that guy filling in for Roger Stone, Jake Novak, said the Jews were better. I did not say that. But for better or for worse, we brought this concept to the world. And for better or for worse, even for the Jews who don't want to be Jewish, who don't want to have anything to do with their religion, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Everyone from the Nazis on down didn't care how Jewish the victims were or how much they prayed. They threw them in the gas chambers just the same as a rabbi and the ultimate and the Jewish communists who were anti-religion. They were equal in the end. That's the hard lesson. And if you have an organization that's throwing out meritocracy, they'll come for the Jews soon enough, which is why I knew these universities long time ago, well before the Hamas stuff and the anti-Israel stuff, starting with affirmative action. And my biggest problem with affirmative action isn't necessarily even the fact that I do think it's philosophically flawed. I don't like having any organization that throws meritocracy to the wind. My biggest problem with affirmative action is it doesn't work. Affirmative action's track record, especially at our universities, is to take students who were been good enough to get into a university of a lower tier, and so taking a kid who otherwise would get into Rutgers and taking him to Harvard. Is that kid going to do better? Yeah, probably. But is that going to change his entire community's trajectory? No. If you want to help people educationally wise, you have to start at K through 12. We can have an entire different show about this. But if you're going to say, oh, well, immigration, Alan Dershowitz still doesn't like the Republican Party's policies on immigration. What is he talking about? Allowing illegal immigrants to come in the country and just giving them citizenship? You think that's good for the Jews? Who do you think these people are who are coming into the country? You think they're real pro-Israel types? Huh, Professor? We've imported massive amounts of anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism into this country under the Biden years. I can't believe that he's not seeing the connection here. It's not just that the Democratic Party woke up one day and decided they were going to hate Israel and, by extension, Jews. They've been pursuing policies that are an anathema to what the Jewish essence in the world is all about. This idea that there is an eternal morality. And I believe Christians are about this too, devout Christians as well. So I'm not saying this is just the Jews, but the Jews started it. I mean, there's no denying the Jews came first. Doesn't mean they're better. They're not better. And I don't believe in race, by the way. I don't believe it's a genetic, scientific thing. I think race is a cultural construct. Skin color is a thing, but that doesn't always judge things. And I don't think that you can take the blood of someone and say, this is a race. Again, that could be an entirely different program. But if you're involved with an organization that says we're no longer going to at least, and look, no one can do it perfectly. We know we're not going to be a perfect meritocracy. But if you stop trying, good luck to you. And if you stop trying and you make it a policy to not try, good luck to the Jews. Because they'll come for them first. Not just because you can get away with more violence if you start with the Jews, as I explained a few minutes ago, but because this is what the Jews represent to the world. An idea that there is a God who doesn't make mistakes, and that there's an eternal morality that you can't change just because your political party or your king or your dictator wants to change what's right or wrong. And Alan Dershowitz should understand that it isn't just an overnight thing with the Democratic Party. It's something that's been there for a long time. As soon as his party became the party of anti-meritocracy, as soon as his party became the party of pro-affirmative action and DEI and all these other programs, he should have known the Jews were in deep trouble. And it doesn't seem like he still gets it. I think he thinks that this is just about an Israel thing. And that's too bad because he's a really, really smart person. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to put him into he's just another person in that very, very large group of people who don't really understand anti-Semitism, where it comes from. It actually has nothing to do with the Jews. It has to do with people who want to destroy civilization and don't want rules. They're starting with the Jews because we're the easiest to get away with it if you kill us and you harm us. But it's not about ideology. It's not about religion. And there's sure as heck nothing Jews can do to make people stop hating us. We can fight back. That's the only thing you can do. We can fight back better, and Jews don't fight back well enough. Outside of Israel, we certainly don't. But that's another issue. Alan Dershowitz should have seen this for a long time. His party and the liberalism in general has become inherently dangerous to Jews, and Israel is only a very small part of it. All right, I'll be back with more, including a little bit about fraud in America, because fraud has become incredibly hard to fathom how huge it is, and I thought it was pretty huge at first. Wait till you hear some of the numbers. I'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
This Friday's The Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get in the zone. It's The Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
And I'm Jake Novak with you again here on The Stone Zone. I don't think I've annoyed the Israel and Jew haters enough, so I want you to listen to this. That's the siren that they play at the beginning of the Israeli Memorial Day. They did that a few hours ago as nightfall hit the state of Israel. They'll do it again tomorrow morning Israel time, where everything stops when that siren goes off. People driving on the highway pull over. They stand at attention. You get out of your car. And this is to remember all the Israeli soldiers who have died in wars and in terrorist attacks. Why am I playing that? Again, not to say that Israel's better. It's not what I'm saying. It's to say that I really like that tradition. I would like to see us do that here in the United States, maybe at 12 noon every Memorial Day, so that we understand that Memorial Day isn't just about barbecues, baseball, and shopping at the mall. It should be Memorial Day, and we should do something like this. I would like to see a siren go off all across the country, and everybody just stop what they're doing. We keep getting on these new immigrants, whether they're legal or illegal, for not being patriotic enough and not knowing enough about America and support. Are we doing enough to actually tell them this? Tell them what's so great about us? Tell us what's important? I don't know. I really don't. It might be on us, folks. This was really hitting home to me during the Gulf War, where at the height of the war, there was one day, it was nice weather here in Manhattan, and I walked from one end of the island to the next. I had a bunch of errands to do. I was just walking a lot. And it occurred to me there's not one indication in the biggest city in the United States, population-wise, that we're at war right now. Not one. Until, end of the day, I went to the post office and I saw a little box in the corner there saying, donate your flip phone for the war effort. I thought to myself, this is outrageous, whether you're for a war or against a war. To not even acknowledge that so many of our fellow Americans are in harm's way is just beyond, it's not acceptable. It's simply not acceptable. Also not acceptable is the amount of fraud that's going on in this country. Here's Secretary Doug Burgum, explaining to a blue-haired Congresswoman, DeLauro, about how much fraud there is in one part of a government. Listen to this.
Some components of the Fish and Wildlife Service are proposed for complete elimination. That includes the state and tribal wildlife grants. Is that wrong?
There was a review done of the grants on the grant side, and that is an area where there's been substantial review. We found organizations that were receiving grants from Interior where 80 to 100% of the revenue of that NGO was a grant from the federal government. And yet those organizations, we were the sole source of their revenue, but they would have a CEO making $650,000 and $400,000 lobbyists.
Let me just.
Yeah. Democrats, and that was Rose DeLauro, by the way, from Connecticut. She's the congresswoman with the blue hair. If you want to have these NGOs and all this funding for your pet projects stay alive and not be cut by Doge or by people like Secretary Burgum, then stop allowing them to get away with this kind of stuff. Clean up your own house, which they're not willing to do. This is just one example. I mean, I hope you heard what Secretary Burgum had to say. They get $1 million in government funding, and almost all of it goes to the CEO of the NGO, the non-government organization. And there's a dozen like these things that you can find in every state, every department, more than a dozen. You want to have this kind of government largesse? Then clean up your own house. I'm Jake Novak. I was in for Roger Stone this evening. I hope you have the rest of this evening is for really just great for you. Thank you so much.
This is Roger Stone with a serious warning for you. Your savings are exposed, and doing nothing right now is the biggest risk of all. Gold and silver remain the final hedge against currency devaluation, inflation, and ongoing economic uncertainty worldwide. So call 844-272-2428 now to get your free gold and silver guide from American Sovereign Bullion and learn how to protect your wealth with gold and silver delivered right to your door or secured in a gold IRA. Visit ASBgold.com. That's ASBgold.com today.